You've seen the pictures, right? The absolutely massive foundation stones at Baalbek, or the laser-like precision of Pumapunku. These ancient megaliths are just an enduring mystery. Now, mainstream history, it has its theories, but a lot of them just don't quite explain how these wonders were actually built. But what if these ruins aren't just architectural puzzles? What if they're actually monuments to a cosmic rebellion? What if we've been looking at all of this completely backward? In this explainer, we're going to unpack a narrative that connects all of these strange global anomalies into one single epic story. A story of forbidden knowledge, hybrid giants, and a war for the very soul of humanity. Okay, so to really get the rebellion, you first have to understand the original plan. Before all the chaos, creation had this divine architecture, a perfect system with clear boundaries and specific roles for everyone. And we're not talking about stone here, we're talking about spheres of influence. And the roles? They were super distinct and really clear. Up in the heavens, you had these celestial beings that the Bible calls watchers. Their job was simple: observe. Don't interfere, just watch. Meanwhile, down here on Earth, humanity, made in God's image, was given a totally different job: to rule, to have dominion and be stewards of the planet. The boundaries couldn't have been clearer. Watchers observe, humanity acts. Simple. But that perfect, simple order, it was broken. And it was broken on purpose. This wasn't some chaotic, impulsive mistake. No. This was a calculated, almost legalistic conspiracy that was hashed on a single mountain peak. 200. That's the number. According to ancient texts, like the Book of Enoch, that's how many watchers came down to Mount Hermon. They went there for one reason: to swear a pact, a binding oath to get their rebellion started. They knew exactly what they were doing, and they swore that oath together so that nobody could back out. It was all or nothing. So they came to humanity with a deal, an offer. They said, "Give us wives from among you, and in exchange we will give you forbidden knowledge." They taught humanity how to make weapons, the secrets of the stars, sorcery, all this stuff humanity was never supposed to have, at least not yet. It was like giving a toddler a loaded weapon. It just instantly collapsed thousands of years of natural development. And here is the truly sinister genius of their plan. It was all about legality. By entering into actual marriage contracts, their children would be legal heirs. Think about that. These kids would be part human, which gave them a claim to humanity's birthright, dominion over the earth. But they were also part watcher, which gave them supernatural power. It was literally a hostile takeover of the planet, disguised as a bunch of weddings. And the result of this unholy union? It was a brand new race of beings who would come to dominate the ancient world, and they would leave their mark on the very stones of the earth. They were called the Nephilim, and the name itself is a huge deal. It means the fallen ones, or even those who cause others to fall. These beings were, frankly, impossible, hybrids of two different realities that should have never, ever mixed. They were demigods, and they were born to take over. The Bible actually describes them this way, but the original Hebrew words here, they paint a picture of a powerful, warrior, aristocratic beings. These were beings who made a name for themselves. They seized glory. It wasn't given to them by God. They were the original titans you read about in all the myths and legends. And this is where the story connects right back to those stones. I mean, how do you explain these structures? This narrative says they were built by the Nephilim, or at least under their direction. It makes sense, right? They had the forbidden knowledge from their fathers and the superhuman strength to pull it off. They were building monuments to their own power, screaming from the rocks, "We are in charge now. We rule." But, as you can probably imagine, this reign of giants led to a world filled with so much violence and corruption that it triggered a divine reset button of catastrophic proportions. The world they built, it was doomed from the start. You know, this wasn't just about things being morally messy. The source material for this view frames it as a seed war. The whole point of the rebellion was genetic. By corrupting the human bloodline, the Watchers were trying to cut off the prophesied birth of a future Redeemer. If there was no pure human line left, the game was over. The rebellion would have won. So, the judgment came, and it was systematic. First, the Watchers were sentenced to watch their own giant sons get turned against each other in a massive civil war. They literally wiped each other out. Then, the Great Flood came and washed the entire world clean. And finally, the rebellious Watchers themselves were rounded up and imprisoned in darkness to await their final judgment. The contrast here is just so stark. On one hand, you have the Nephilim building these monuments of pride with forbidden knowledge, and the outcome is total ruin. On the other hand, you have Noah building the ark out of sheer obedience, using knowledge that was revealed to him by God, and the outcome is salvation. It's a tale of two builders, two completely different motives, and two wildly different endings. But the story doesn't end with the flood. Not even close. The book of Genesis drops in this really chilling phrase. It says the Nephilim were on the earth in those days and also afterward. The giant problem somehow came back. Yep, after the flood, new giant clans started popping up all over the land of Canaan. The Anakim, the Rephaim, people like King Og, whose bed was reportedly 13 feet long. This totally reframes the Israelite conquest of Canaan, doesn't it? It wasn't just a land dispute. It was round 2 of the Seed War, a divine mission to clear the promised land of these corrupt, hybrid bloodlines once and for all. And this brings us to one of the most famous showdowns in history. David versus Goliath wasn't just a cute underdog story. In this framework, it was the symbolic climax of this thousands of years-long war. It was the pure line of Adam, through David, finally and definitively defeating the last remnants of the serpent's corrupted seed. So, what's the point of these ruins now? Why were they left for us to find? Well, according to this narrative, they weren't just abandoned. They were left as a permanent message, a sermon in stone for every generation that followed. And that sermon has 4 main points. First, these ruins stand as a permanent witness to God's judgment against pride. Second, they enforce our humility, acting as a constant reminder that we do not know everything. Third, their mystery is actually a form of mercy. The dangerous knowledge used to build them remains sealed away from us. And maybe most importantly, they serve as a warning that this pattern of rebellion could absolutely happen again. This one verse from the Psalms just perfectly sums up the entire lesson of the megaliths, doesn't it? Human achievement, no matter how incredible or impressive it looks, is ultimately just empty. It's laboring in vain if it's built in rebellion against the divine plan. It will always, always end in ruin. And that leaves us with a final and pretty challenging thought. The patterns of that ancient world, reaching for power beyond our limits, the temptation to rewrite our own genetic code, to become like gods. I mean, those themes sound awfully familiar today, don't they? Jesus himself warned that the end would look a lot like the days of Noah. The stones have been telling their story for thousands of years. The only question is, are we listening?